Alright, Wise Guy here with some footage of me working on two different Ford Duratec engines. One is going to be on a failed attempt of reviving this 2008 Ford Edge with the 3.5 liter due to engine damage from contamination from antifreeze coming from a blown water pump. The other is going to be on the 2009 Lincoln MKS with the 3.7 liter, doing some preventative maintenance so it doesn't end up like the Ford Edge here. In the 2009 Lincoln MKS, on their timing cover, once you remove all these bolts, the 6 longest bolts at the top of the cover, they've actually provided extra holes on the cover to use those 6 long bolts to screw back into the cover, which simply just presses the cover off the block. Okay, so obviously I started filming after I've taken the Lincoln apart, but I decided better late than never. But primarily this video is going to be on the Ford Edge, and I just wanted to document, since I'm in here on the Lincoln, where I'm at and what I'm doing. So the Lincoln threw a code for low oil pressure, and I determined that's it. I'm going to stop driving the vehicle because I knew I already wanted to get in here and replace the water pump before that linked coolant into the engine case. So I've already installed the new oil pump and water pump, but I'll be showing more on that on the Ford Edge. Here's the old oil pump, but basically on the new one, you can see I even have some oil here. I just filled it with some oil, took my finger in here and just manually turned the pump a bit to work some oil in there. And there's 2 flat spots, one right here and one right here. I don't know if you can see that, but that needs to align with 2 flat spots on the, I don't know, the part of the crankshaft here, so it can seat all the way into the engine block. And I figured I'll put a new O-ring on there because I'll be damned if I do all this work and I have a leak right where the O-ring is and lose oil pressure from neglecting to spend a few bucks on a new O-ring. But yes, preventative maintenance. You may as well do timing chains, new oil pump, water pump while you're in here, so the unthinkable doesn't happen like in the Ford Edge I'm about to show. That's it. So I'm at a point now where I'm just going to entirely remove the old chain. Here's the new timing chain. Okay, I'm going to start over here on bank 1. Come around this guide, pull tight on the chain around the water pump, up along the next guide. See, and I have slack here. And on bank 2, my paint on the chain is not aligning with my white dot. And there's a little slack here. We need to work this slack down around all the way through the bottom and end up over there by the tensioner. This makes me nervous. So I am going to slightly turn the camshaft just to take up some of that slack off the chain. And now I'm aligned. The chain is tight. Now this is what I did not do on the edge, and I think I'm off one tooth. I'm going to find out when I get in there. And that bracket sits back flush beautifully. Coming down to the bottom deck. Put the sprocket back over the crankshaft. All right, so that's very frustrating, but I believe that is why I'm going to have to get back into the timing cover on the forward edge, because of that one little detail you just saw me do. I really just didn't want to move the camshafts at all. That was the purpose of these specialty brackets, so I would not be off timing. So all I did was add the right guide for the chain guide on the right side. And the 2 bolts, and you can see my yellow paint mark doesn't quite stretch over the sprocket tooth. I can't turn it, and coming up, you know, that for it to seat, that would leave slack on the wrong side. We need to get this chain tight, can't be off one tooth, and get the slack over here to where the tensioner is gonna place tension on the chain. So we're going to do this one more time, which makes me nervous, but I think that's what needs to happen. I'm going to take off the camshaft holding bracket and slightly tighten this. I think that just worked the chain down just enough to seat. Okay, I believe it's on there. Okay, so I installed the timing chain tensioner, so now it has full tension against the timing chain guide. The paint on the chain is aligning with my dot on the sprocket of the crankshaft slightly. It is aiming towards the top of this painted mark, not right in the middle. Okay, so I just cleaned up the timing cover a bit, just kind of scuffed up around the outer perimeter where all the bolts go through, where I'm going to apply some silicone RTV. And I had just recently tapped out the crankshaft seal, and I figured maybe I should just show this part in case anybody's interested in getting a closer look at the timing cover. It's on there pretty good. Maybe another tap or two. I just supported it with a little block of wood. Okay, real quick, I just want to get a short video clip on the Lincoln and the power steering pump now that the timing cover is on. So let's see if hopefully you can see this. There's 4 holes. Now at the top of the timing cover there's that long threaded stem that's going to slide through this hole here, and that just kind of holds it in place. And on the Lincoln, my best approach was coming in the wheel well on the passenger side, obviously, and just over to the left of the rotor to access it. So it's always been kind of dangling here by the hose. I never fully disconnected it or drained it or anything. Here's the side view from the timing cover. So that long threaded stem is threaded into the timing cover on the top. And what's kind of nice about the Lincoln is it looks like that stem will help kind of hold this in place, instead of having to hold it and try to get the bolt started like on the edge. I think I'm going to come around to get it started from the front view here. This top bolt, I basically have a short extension with a short 10 millimeter, and I can't even see it, but what I did is come up and just did it by feel. Got that on there, and that's definitely not enough room from top or bottom to get an air ratchet. So I think this is the hardest part. Very time consuming, but it's not that bad. Just get it done and the rest goes back together very easily. All right, now I'm looking at the 2008 Ford Edge, and accessing the power steering pump on this Duratec is a bit more challenging. I'm going to show off what's involved. Coming around to the wheel well, there's the power steering pulley, and coming off to the left side of the rotor, similar to how I did on the Lincoln, you can see that it's enclosed off with a lot of parts and metal. I can't see the power steering pump at all. There's definitely no access to those bolts on the back of it, and especially the top bolt. So that involves coming around to the front and accessing it from the top. So what I do is I grab a little handheld mirror here, and I just dangle it, and I come around here past this motor bracket here. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. There's a some kind of cooling line or heating line, and I take that handle and wedge it behind it. Let's see if we can see that. Now in the mirror, oh, it's hard to see. That little wire that goes on top of the power steering pump. Try to get in here a little bit more. Literally need to climb in here. So I'm using this mirror to look at what I'm doing. Well, it's not a great view, but basically I just pulled this clip and wire off the top of the power steering pump. And I don't know if you can see that, but there's the top bolt. There is not much room in here at all. Okay, so I have this 10mm angled wrench. I'm going to try to get a better view. Last time I did this job, I had this valve cover off, and that gave me more room to work in here. But I was constantly concerned that I'm going to get some kind of debris on to the camshafts and into the engine. So I'm going to attempt this with the valve cover on. And to loosen it, I'm going to have the wrench towards the left and coming around clockwise. So if you can see, hopefully, the end of my wrench in the mirror here, this is what's involved. Getting it on there. Oh, see if I take this off. Here's an actual look. I just don't know if I took this off, pulling that line up, if I could get it back on in this tight area. And then I have to worry about refilling the power steering pump and bleeding out all the air and all that crap. So again, this is that little clip to take the wire off the power steering pump. This is the top bolt. That is the hardest part of this job by far. But patience will be worth the reward. So I am coming up with a little better rhythm. So if you can see my hand way off to the left here compared to that engine bracket to lift the engine out. Working in the mirror. I have the wrench on the socket, so if we focus on my hand, I was coming this far and hitting this bracket and stopping and starting over. But the angle of that wrench helps. If you push back around that bracket, I can come all the way around here and get a good quarter turn before coming off and starting again. And that's helping me cover a lot more ground, a lot less turns of the wrench. Let's see if I can show that again. Working in the mirror. Hitting that bracket, pushing down around and coming around. I actually am getting there. Okay, I decided I do want to show off a little before and after of the camshafts from all that contamination from the antifreeze. I spent countless time with a little Brillo pad, brake cleaner, and then have since, and I was driving it, and that was kind of help self-cleaning it after a couple oil changes. Let's take a look. So this is the aftermath. That is really not bad from compared to what it once was. That seal wants to stay on there. Yeah, that's cleaning up pretty well. Okay, so last small detail on the Ford Edge power steering pump. I showed you the top bolt, the lower two bolts. One is very visible right here at my fingertip. Not a lot of space. The other, there's another bolt there where the hose that attaches to the power steering pump goes to. It's not that bolt, it's this one here. You can barely see it where my wrench is on. And I have a small 10mm ratcheting wrench. I have to put my right hand in above the, what is this, half shaft, and I'll show you how I got the wrench in here. I can't even hold it at the bottom of the wrench. I have to hold it at the top. Okay. Come in over the half shaft and let it dangle. I can't see. There it is. Couldn't see where I was going. And just little turns. You could see it coming. Drive you crazy, but just really probably 10-15 minutes. Way longer than any normal bolt, but it's accessible. Okay, so this is something that I noticed the first time I was working on it. I would get one of these camshaft holding brackets nice and flush. Okay, nice and seated. And the other one was not symmetrical. So I can get one side partially on and the other side I'm not. In fact, it's even worse this time. So maybe as it's out of timing, it gets worse and worse. I'm unsure. But this confirms we are out of timing. These two tools should be holding the camshafts symmetrically, and they're not. So we're just slightly off timing, and I'm certain once I reposition this timing chain and you know, just take a wrench or something on the camshafts on bank one there and straighten it out so they're in alignment, we will not be throwing that code anymore, and engine performance should be much better. But real quick, I'm just going to recap where I'm at. The battery, I started with the battery, a couple bolts on the battery. Then I removed the air filter housing. That connected to the throttle body had one little bolt that was kind of hard to get to on the clamp. And then the intake manifold, very easy and accessible. There was 5 bolts or so on the top. It did involve reaching around to the back and just pulling up a tube that just easily released from the valve cover, as well as a tube coming around to the back of the battery connected to this vacuum hose here that just pulled straight out, very easy. Back to that throttle body, there's 5 bolts, very easy and accessible. Then that involved just removing the 11 bolts or so on bank 1 valve cover. Same with the bank 2 valve cover. Oh, well, all these little electrical connectors everywhere. That is very challenging and a pain in the ass. You'll probably break half of them. I'm going to just push them back on and support them with some zip ties for now, just to get operating again, and somehow look into replacing several of those clips. I had gone over to the top and got that difficult bolt for the top of the power steering pump. Spark plugs, ignition coils, super easy, accessible. Coming around over here to the, let's see, what is that? The tensioner serpentine belt, very easy. Coming down and around. What did I do? I removed the stretch belt off the camshaft pulley to the power steering pump. I have a specialty tool for that around here. This guy here. One side says remove. One side says install. I can't figure out how to get it to work installing it, but that's why I use that zip tie trick. And then I need to remove the motor mount. And last time I made this big elaborate thing to support it underneath, and really it's not, I don't know, it doesn't need to be that complex. This is what I did. Let's see if I can get a light. So I have just cut a 3x3 block of wood. I have just a short block of wood on top of my jack. So just trying to get even support on the bottom of the oil pan with that block of wood. Just lift up a bit. So you can feel the whole motor shift after those 4 bolts are removed, especially after the last bolt. Okay, looks like I had to release 2 small 8mm bolts on the degas bottle just to give me space to get the motor mount out. Okay, and obviously I had to remove 10, 15 little plastic clips for this whole entire wheel well weather protector, weather guard. And now we have 3 bolts from the motor mount bracket to the timing cover. Okay, a couple things worth noting. Having the degas bottle out of the way, I can get my whole arm in here and use that to support my ratchet to keep it on the head of the bolt on one of the motor mount bracket bolts. That came out no problem. The other top bolt, you have to be very careful that you don't back this bolt out to a point where your ratchet is right up against the frame of the car and you can't press or access the directional ratchet here to then at that point to drive it back forward to give you enough space to get your ratchet off the bolt. I've had that happen before and it sucked. So I started with the ratchet and then ended with the open-ended wrench, ratcheting wrench. And this top bolt, try see how long it is? It hits the frame of the car. So you have to lift the motor up. Okay, so I'm going to bring this down. Just enough for clearance to get the bolt out. Okay, then coming back down and around, slowly releasing it back onto our supporting block to take some of the load off this jack. Piece of conduit, use that as leverage just to break torque on the bolt. Okay, so really not a big deal, but I have to watch this clearance here. If I start getting close to the frame of the car, I can get in real trouble. So I'm gonna have to switch to the open-ended wrench. To finish the job. It hits the bottom of the frame. It's too long to come out. Just barely. Okay, so I'm gonna have to lower the motor again just to get clearance. Okay, so that's gonna involve raising up the motor just enough to remove the supporting block. I need clearance on that bolt, but we don't want to lower the motor too much and cause any damage. Very slowly. That's sketchy. Now, fuck. So the motor mount bracket is wedged now. There's no room for clearance, so I need to raise it back up. Okay, my recording didn't work out, but a few moments later, this just wiggled out. I wasn't going to show this, but I decided it is important. I have removed all the timing cover bolts, and you can see that a lot of them have thread sealer, and I used so much silicone RTV around the cover last time I was in there, and then put these bolts in before it dried, so it's embedded in the threads of these bolts. So what I do, I've cleaned a couple. I just use a little acetone into a glass jar, and I soak these bolts because you are going to be fighting it, screwing these back in, and they're not going to be secure. So I soak them in acetone a bit, okay? Try not to get it on my hands. That's not really a good example. Let me get one that's really gunked up. Okay, so like this one has a lot of silicone on it. Now that it's soaked in acetone, coming over to a wire brush, it should just come off very easily. See that? Okay, time to press the timing cover off with the 6 bolts. Well, that's not good. This bolt right here is giving me lots of resistance, and I'm gonna hold off on going any further because I don't want to risk cracking it some more. So yeah, just accessing those middle bolts with an air ratchet, there wasn't enough space. I tried an angled wobble socket and that ended up breaking. And I think I got the wrench on there and I just may have cross-threaded and ended up cracking the head of that threaded access point. So now I'm just grabbing behind the timing cover, trying to pry a bit. So way more. Oh, we're leaking some oil. You know, I never actually drained the oil out of this car. That'll be interesting to see. There we go. Just one simple pry with a long screwdriver seemed to release the seal. Just need to break free right in this area. There we go. See if we can get this cover up and out. This little wire is always in the way. What is this? Power steering reservoirs, power steering hose. Just hanging us up a little bit. Being very careful not to damage these VVT solenoids, because that car will not operate if those are damaged, and you'll have to get right back in here. See. Wow, look at that. I never drained the engine oil. So there's our timing chain. We're going to get that into proper alignment and put it back together. All right, new timing chain on the Ford Edge. Let's take a look at an image of the alignment with the paint and the timing marker on the phaser. Looking good. Our brackets are flush. And coming down and around, the timing mark is right dead center of the paint on the chain. Where on the Lincoln, I feel like I may have done the same mistake. I just put it back to exactly how it was from the photo I took from the before shot. But I do think it's supposed to be centered, like on the edge here. And I notice when I'm idling at low speed, like at a stop sign, and I start going, there's a little hesitant, like almost a slight stall, very intermittent. When the VVT system is unbolted from the phaser is the best time to come around and clean up around the timing cover, removing all the silicone, as there's a lot more clearance to get your hand in there and clean around the surface. So what I would do differently installing the stretch belt on the power steering pump is I would have just laid it over the power steering pulley, not around the crankshaft pulley at all. Then apply 2 zip ties. I would then rotate that pulley, so one of the zip ties is down at the 6 o'clock position and the other around the 4 o'clock position. Then wrap the rest of the belt around the crankshaft pulley. At this point, the top of the stretch belt would not be over the top of the power steering pulley at all. Then I would just push the belt from the crankshaft towards the power steering pulley while turning the wrench on the crankshaft pulley. And that's a challenge, but just one simple push while turning it, it'll grab a hold and pull it around. So I kind of just pulled this belt, or pushed it forward to the pulley as I started turning the crankshaft, and that just got it started. And now we can see it's pulling it on. Almost on all the way. Fuck. And just like that, it's on. And now both those zip ties just snapped on their own, but the belt is stretched on, and you just want to come underneath the frame here and just get a good look that it's seated, because I did this one time and it wasn't seated properly. I had a nightmare installing the RTV silicone. I had a used tube in a caulk gun, which I would never do again. I would use a brand new tube, and it was coming out fine at first. Then it started getting too dry and not coming out of the caulk gun. I couldn't even get the tube out of the caulk gun. I had to get a hacksaw out and cut the entire tube in half as it was starting to dry around the engine block when I was applying it. I just got my finger in there and went around in panic mode and just kind of slopped on as much as I could around the block of the engine, and I was able to pull that off. After that, the engine did run kind of roughly while it was idling, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was symptoms of a throttle body. So I had taken the throttle body back apart, re-cleaned it. I should show some pictures of that from the before. And behind the throttle body from the air intake manifold, how much contamination with antifreeze was in there. So I re-cleaned it again, and it still was idling rough, and kind of a bonehead move on my part, but this is what I found. This main wire harness on the valve cover here, this gray clip here, you know, you latch that over and it secures the wire harness. It was still in this position, so I don't know if I didn't latch it good enough or didn't latch it at all, but whatever. Once I did that, the engine fired right up. The vehicle sounded great. I had driven it around on a few small trips around the neighborhood, and I did get an engine code. It was P0174. The engine cylinder bank 2 is running too lean. The description, there's too much air, not enough fuel. So what I ended up doing, I grabbed a can of mass airflow sensor cleaner, and I came around to the mass airflow sensor, just easily accessible right here on top of the air filter housing, couple Torx head screws, pulled it out, sprayed it with mass airflow sensor. And that doesn't surprise me, because again, that throttle body and air intake manifold had some of that, you know, oil and antifreeze, and it must have just got in there, and I cleaned that out. So on the Ford Edge, it had thorough cleaning of the camshafts, the engine bay, numerous oil changes, new timing change, oil pump, water pump, solenoids, new seals on the valve covers, on the spark plugs, the serpentine belts. I started driving it for about 3 weeks with no issues. I was really just confident that this vehicle was fixed, and it did have a couple drives that had overheating, so I started flushing the coolant system, and then I was again very confident that the issues were resolved, and I decided to take it for a true test drive and sort of go up a highway up to Lake Tahoe and really put a strain on the engine. And basically it was really struggling going up the hill, wouldn't shift into the next gear, and just lost power. And now it has resulted in a rod knocking noise when the engine's running. So I hate being wrong, and hopefully this finds somebody out there that it's going to be unsuccessful trying to revive this engine after water gets into those bearings. So I'm going to conclude the video with some footage of how it sounds when you run the vehicle. Again, this is Wise Guy. Thanks for watching.